Carl Sagan is one of the preeminent astronomers of our time. He is known for bringing the heavens to our living rooms with his PBS series Cosmos. His latest work is The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark. It explores the country's growing fascination with pseudoscience.
My feeling, Charlie, is that it's not that pseudoscience and superstition and New Age so-called beliefs and fundamentalist zealotry are something new. They've been with us for as long as we've been human. But we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological powers.
Science and technology are propelling us forward at accelerating rates.
That's right. And if we don't understand it, by we I mean the general public, if it's something that, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't know anything about it, then who is making all the decisions about science and technology that are going to determine what kind of future our children live in? Just some members of Congress? But there's no more than a handful of members of Congress with any background in science at all. There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government runs us. Jefferson said that he was at heart a scientist, that he would have loved to have been a scientist, but there were certain events happening in America that called to him, and so he devoted his life to that kind of politics. Indeed, so that generations later, people could be scientists. You see, people read the stock market quotations and financial pages. Look how complex that is. People are able to look at sports statistics. Look how many people can do that. Understanding science is not more difficult than that. It doesn't involve greater intellectual activities. But the thing about science is, first of all, it's after the way the universe really is and not what makes us feel good. And a lot of the competing doctrines are after what feels good and not what's true. Okay. What is faith? It is belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I don't propose to tell anybody what to believe, but for me, believing when there's no compelling evidence is a mistake. The idea is to withhold belief until there is compelling evidence. And if the universe does not comply with our predispositions, okay, then we have the wrenching obligation to accommodate to the way the universe really is. Religion deals with history, with poetry, with great literature, with ethics, with morals, including the morality of treating compassionately the least fortunate among us. All of these are things that I endorse wholeheartedly. Where religion gets into trouble is in those cases that it pretends to know something about science. The science in the Bible, for example, was acquired by the Jews from the Babylonians during the Babylonian captivity of 600 BC. That was the best science on the planet. But we've learned something since then. Roman Catholicism, Reformed Judaism, most of the mainstream Protestant denominations have no difficulty with the idea that humans have evolved from other creatures, that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, with the Big Bang. They don't have any trouble with that. The trouble comes with people who are biblical literalists, who believe that the Bible is dictated by the creator of the universe. So who is more humble? The scientist who looks at the universe with an open mind and accepts whatever the universe has to teach us, or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered the literal truth, and never mind the fallibility of all the human beings involved in the writing of this book? Some people think that every jot and tittle in the Bible is essential. You throw one thing away to allegory or metaphor, then it's up to everybody to make their own decision.
Are we different than other nations?
Absolutely not. You can see this worldwide. In India, there's a madness about astrology. In Britain, it's ghosts. In Germany, it's rays coming up from the Earth that can only be detected by dowsers. Every country has its own specialties. We seem to be fascinated by UFOs right now. I do not believe his patience. Many of these stories are about waking up from a deep sleep and finding your bed surrounded by 3 or 4 short, dour, gray, and sexually obsessed beings, who then take you to their spaceship after they slither you through your wall. He says, I don't appreciate the emotional force.
You don't.
Of these reports. But many people awaken from a nightmare with profound emotional force. That doesn't mean that the nightmare is true. It means something went on inside our head. Going back to the question of adequate evidence on something that's emotionally really pulling you. I lost both my parents about 12 or 15 years ago, and I had a great relationship with them. I really miss them. I would love to believe that their spirits were around somewhere, and I'd give almost anything to spend 5 minutes a year with them.
Do you hear their voices ever?
Sometimes. About 6 or 8 times since their death I've heard, Carl, just in the voice of my father or my mother. Now, I don't think that means that they're in the next room. I think it means that
They're in your presence.
I've had an auditory hallucination. I was with them so long, I heard their voices so often. Why shouldn't I be able to make a vivid recollection?
Here's what's interesting about this for me. You won't see this, but I'll throw it at you anyway. You convinced me a long time ago that it was arrogant for me or for anyone else to believe that there wasn't some life outside of our...
To exclude the possibility.
To exclude the possibility was an arrogance of intellect that we should not assume. You couldn't prove it. You didn't know it was there, but the arrogance for you.
Right. We don't know if it's there. We don't know if it's not there. Let's look.
And if you take that, why can't you say there's a lot we don't know? There's a lot of power there that we don't know.
There's a lot we don't know.
You know,
that's what I believe.
But
that doesn't mean that every fraudulent claim has to be accepted. We demand the most rigorous standards of evidence, especially on what's important to us. So if some guy comes up to me, and a channeler or a medium, and says, I can put you in touch with your parents. Well, because I want so terribly to believe that, I know I have to reach in for added reserves of skepticism, because I'm likely to be fooled and much more minor to have my money taken. Could there be a unknown mammal or even reptile of large dimensions swimming in a Scottish lake? Sure there could. That we don't know about? Sure there could. Who says no?
But nobody.
But the evidence does not support it, does not demonstrate it. So do we say, oh, ridiculous? No, we don't do that. We say unproved, which is a Scottish verdict. This is part of being human. Humans have had this way of magical thinking through all of our history. The problem is that today the technology has reached formidable, maybe even awesome proportions. And so the dangers of thinking this way are larger. Not that this is a new kind of thing. Well, you know, with diseases of this sort and all cancers.
Cancer of the bone marrow?
It's mild dysplasia is not exactly cancer of the bone marrow, but if untreated, it inevitably leads to leukemia. And the trouble with all these diseases is you never know that you've got every last cell. You can only detect down to a certain level. But down to the level that anybody can detect, and in terms of how I feel and my stamina and all that, it seems to be gone. Very lucky.
Because you had a sister who now enabled
carrier.
you to have a bone marrow transplant.
That's one, and also the enormous advances in scientific, in medical science in just the last few years. If I had had this thing 5 or 10 years ago, I would be dead sure as shooting. And then finally, the love and support of my family. All of those have played a central role.
So you're optimistic?
I'm very optimistic, or at least very hopeful.